If you like to watch Survivor, and when the show ends, you really want to talk about it with like-minded friends. It might be hard to find some, but don't you shed a tear. Check out the Purple Rock Podcast, and this is what you'll hear. John will make some dumb jokes, and he likes to yell and curse. And if they're not available, the backup hosts are so much worse. We'll spend the whole time being jerks and telling you you're wrong. So we found a nice person to sing you our theme song. It's the Purple Rock Survivor Podcast.
Welcome to the Purple Rock Survivor Podcast. I am John, and I'm joined by one of those so much worse backup hosts that were mentioned in that beautiful new theme song of ours. It's Matt this week. Welcome back, Matt.
Hey, thanks for having the so much worse backup host. I'm glad I could fill in.
I should clarify because there was an issue last week. I plugged our brilliant theme song singer as Abigail Klein Music on Instagram, which used to be her Instagram. It is currently Abigail Klein Composer. So if you're looking for her, Abigail Cline Composer on Instagram. Not going to give her a plug every time, but I figure I should at least give her one correct plug.
Well, way to own your mistakes. Obviously better podcast host.
Hey, you're just trying to get another spot on this podcast, aren't you? All right, so let's talk about the actual show that we're here to discuss. What were your general thoughts on the episode? How'd you like this one?
I liked it. I've been liking what this season's given us so far. I think there's a lot of potentially interesting people. I think there's been some curveballs that aren't of the why are you doing that variety, but more of the, oh, that's interesting. I kind of want to see where that goes. So, no, I'm liking this show so far, and I like this episode.
Yeah, and I'm with you. We discussed this a little bit last week, but the cast there, it just seems like there's a lot of potential for this one. And, it always seems like there is potential for at least most groups at the beginning of the season, but I do feel like...
Not always, no.
Often. I should correct that. There's just been no one that I find exceptionally bland or overly obnoxious just yet. There's again one breakout star that we mentioned last week, although she kind of disappeared this week.
Yep.
But it seems like a nice, well-rounded cast for this new casting person.
I think it is. I think the cast is very well-rounded. I do think there are some people who could be bland, but it's kind of funny. The person who leaps to mind as the blandest is getting a purple edit, and it's a character who you normally wouldn't see that, and that's Dean. That's his name, right?
Yes. We'll actually discuss him a little bit later.
But okay.
That's the thing that I don't mind. I've always been a firm supporter of if someone is exceptionally bland when they get out there on the island, you don't have to show them or show us what they were like on the island. I get it. I'll take your word. They were bland. They were boring.
Right. No, exactly. It's like, if you're bland, I don't care if you won Survivor. I still don't need to see a lot of you.
Well, Edgic would always tell you what you needed to know in those situations.
Yes, it did. It sadly did.
So let's talk about the vote this episode, because they took out Molly. Did it feel like the right time to take out Molly?
With a move like this, there's always a little bit of, right time for who type of thing. But I'm going to say no. I don't think it was.
Yeah, I don't either. And I think it gets to kind of a larger point, which is that it feels like everybody now wants to make every vote a big move.
Yep.
And it's just, it doesn't always need to be that. Like, you can just get an easy one under your belt sometimes.
And the thing about the move, and to me this really came down to Molly versus Noura. Noura's someone who, you think you can put up with for a while because it's been 6 days. It's going to get harder to put up with someone who annoys you the longer you go. And we already see signs that Noura annoys at least some of the people out there. Now, maybe the people who were the ones that orchestrated the move are not annoyed by her, in which case then they know they can put up with her. But to me, this move was very much someone that was in the majority alliance, probably fairly close to Molly, even if not super close, saw the three they thought were running the show and decided, I want to be calling the shots. And the easiest way to do that is just to knock out one of those three.
That is true. It just feels a little too early. You haven't even firmly figured out where the alliances lie yet. It's just sniffing out where you think the power lies.
Right.
Which sometimes you're right. I mean, sometimes it's blatantly obvious. I mean, there was in Ghost Island, it was blatantly obvious where the power lied, and no one did anything about it.
Well, they told everyone every week where the power lied, and no one did anything about it.
That situation is way more frustrating, watching people not do anything about it. This time they're doing something about it. I just think it's a little premature. I think really you could just you could pull that move off later. There's going to be time. It's the very first vote.
Right.
I mean, take the easy vote, take out Noura, everybody's happy. Then next week you get a little more creative.
Right. And the other thing is this. It's kind of like, imagine, if you will, that the alliance that you believe you're in is true. That you have an 8-person alliance, there's 2 people on the outside. Let's say you take that 8-person alliance pretty far. The 3 people you think you're in charge is not a majority of that alliance. So I'm not really sure why you're chomping at the bit to make the move now unless you need to be perceived as the leader. And that's the part that to me kind of strikes me as a little odd because, I mean, personally, I would never want to be perceived as the leader this early on. At some point you have to, right? At some point you have to be seen as making moves. Or at least people think they do in Modern Survivor, and I think they're right.
Yeah, I think so too.
But as you're saying, like, this is the first vote. I'm not sure why you need to do it now. I mean, but it's one of those, people get out there and they just want to do big things and do crazy things because they've been watching the show and they're like, I only have so much time to do this. I got to do this. So,
it is a way to get you on TV.
That's definitely true.
I think the thing is, I don't know that it does a great job of accounting for potential swaps.
Yep.
Which can come relatively early in a season.
I mean, they could be coming next episode. I don't know.
It could. It wasn't teased that it would be, but that doesn't mean it's not going to happen. Yep. Yeah, I mean, it's risky that, the general time frame when a swap might happen to suddenly alienate 2 people when you could have just voted out an easy person and had one outsider in your big group. Just seems we're fine with risk around here. That's just not the right kind of risk to take.
Now, the other thing is this, it's the first vote. People generally kind of like play nice, even if it doesn't go their way, because that's how you get further in the game. So I'm not sure that this is going to be the type of thing that drives a forever stake between, like a couple people here. And it might also be the type of thing where know that the 2 people with her maybe aren't as close to her as they say they are, but you just didn't want to tip her off. So, there might be more at play here than what we saw. But from what we saw, I think it was a little too early. I mean,
yeah, I just think the general trend seems to be, and it's not just this season, it's been several lately, where you're going for these, like, outsized threats early on. And, obviously the person is not always a threat. Sometimes that's just something you say to suit their ego or whatever. In this case, I do think they genuinely saw Molly as someone that had some power in this game.
Yep.
Whether it's her alliances or her charm or whatever it might be. It's just, I kind of get it from a game perspective, but man, is it disappointing when you're watching the show because it ends up taking out people who might have been fun to watch later on.
Yeah, and I think that's something that I came out of. I began the episode thinking like, hey, I really like Molly. She's a lot of fun. And, it looks like she might have some game. And then I ended the episode with, oh, man, there goes Molly. It's kind of disappointing in that perspective because I do think that she might have had some game. But let me ask you this. Did you think that Ronnie was a big move and was too early?
Absolutely not. I mean, well, to a degree, it was a big move in that it was saving Elaine. I think it was just, I don't know that it was ever necessarily going to be Elaine or Vince. I think there was enough of a voting block that was like, nah, it's not going to be someone from this group.
Right.
So it didn't necessarily feel like a big move.
Right, and the reason I ask that is because, I think, if you've been watching Survivor for a while, as we have, what used to be considered a big move early was taking out, muscle in the first couple votes. Now what's a big move early is taking out people that, for whatever reason, you think can win the game or are threats to win the game later. And, what Ronnie was talking about in targeting Elaine he was talking about exactly that. He was saying that Elaine was a threat to win the game, and that's what they were saying about Molly, too. So it's kind of interesting how that has changed over time as well.
Yeah, but it, again, gets back to that thing that I was saying, which is there's always the talk of a person being a threat.
Yes.
Which isn't always true. It's just sometimes a nice, easy in to a conversation with someone where you're basically trying to say, I want to vote out X person.
You mean people have pretexts for, for voting someone out when they don't know them very well?
I hope you were sitting down when I dropped that bomb.
I'm always sitting down, John. That's my superpower.
Yeah, it's fortunate for this podcasting endeavor. Another thing I wanted to get at, because we're talking about Molly, why is it that everyone is a Parvati, but no one's ever a Candice? Like, everyone that you, want to label as a threat is a Parvati. Why is that?
Is this a question from I think I saw this in the emails from a Mrs. John Cody, and then was asking that question, right?
Just for comparison's sake, both of them played 3 times, twice on the same season. Yep. They're both smart. They're both attractive. Candice never won. Yep. Candice is like the Parvati that loses.
Yes.
Parvati is basically the only Parvati that wins, unless you want to call Kim a Parvati, which I think is a stretch.
Right.
But, there's one Parvati, and Parvati is a rarity. So you're naming all these potential targets. It's like, oh, that person could be a Parvati. Look out. Nah, Parvati's kind of unique. That's why she's revered. She's really good at this. Most people aren't that good. Right. I think people are so much in a rush to give those Player X 2.0 labels to people to make them seem like better targets. Sort of the same thing we were just talking about. They increase their threat level.
And I think that's exactly it. I think it's a way to increase their threat level. And I think it increases, and I think the idea of a Parvati is so threatening because if you look at how Parvati won, she won by basically embarrassing the men of her season. And they were helpless to stop it because they were so beguiled by her. So the threat, especially to men, in my opinion, women will also throw out she's a Parvati, that's a threat. But when they say that, they usually mean it in the context of that person's effect. They're worried about their effect on the men on that tribe. And the idea, I think the mythological Parvati, not the actual one, is someone who can just twist men around their finger and get them to do anything they want. The actual.
Meanwhile, real Parvati is the one that's reading JT's letter out loud to him and doing fake cries to him and just totally trolling.
Right,
the guy.
and the real
Parvati messes around with people.
Totally, right. And I think that's the it kind of gets reduced to this femme fatale, from a 1940s noir movie or something, which is you could probably write a psychological paper on that. Not that we would, but
Nope.
someone else could. But you're right. I think they compare to Parvati because it is so threatening to some people and to certain people because the one thing they're scared of the most is a woman who can, basically make them do something stupid and make them look foolish.
Man, I really miss Parvati.
Oh yeah, she's great.
I wish she'd come back and play. Wouldn't that be amazing?
Nah, it'll never happen. Never happen. No chance.
if it were to happen sometime in the near future, I'd be so hyped for that. I don't know if I could even put it into words.
Now, do you think that if Parvati ever came back, that that the people that would play with her would be worried that she's the next Parvati?
Oh, absolutely.
Yeah.
I think that the first vote would go towards her, and they'd be like, "Look, we got to look out for her. She is a Parvati 2.0."
Right. Well, at that point, it might be like 3 or 4.0. So.
Yeah, hey, 4.0 by that point. But I mean, here's one of the things that bothers me with this whole so-and-so is player 2.0, whatever. Like, lately, we've had some relatively milquetoast winners. So why aren't people talking about taking out the bland and uninteresting woman? Like, oh, let's get rid of Michelle 2.0 over here. Or like, the least threatening player around, call him Adam 2.0. Like, oh, we gotta get rid of Adam 2.0 over there. He's gonna sit there and, not do anything.
Yeah, no,
play an idol wrong or something somewhere down the line.
I think it's because everyone saw the failure of Tyler, and they were like, well, a bland person can never win, and they just stopped watching after that. So
I wouldn't blame them for stopping to watch after. Like, if Tyler made you give up on this show, I would not blame you.
You'd be very proud. But it's a good point. Like, any type can win. I mean, like, we always said that, that there were certain types that couldn't win, but we have seen pretty much every type of person win Survivor. Now, there are certain types that
fucking Tyson won.
Tony won.
These things should never happen. Sandra won 2 times.
That's right. We've seen Challenge Beasts win. It's been a long time, but people are like, oh, well, they'll just vote them out the first chance they get. And yet Tom won. We've seen every type win. So you're right. Why do they only target certain types?
It bothers me mostly because, like, if they really did say, like, hey, let's take out the Adam 2.0, I'd be like, yeah, I am on board with this big move.
Well, it'd be great too if they took out the Adam 2.0, because then they'd be voting out the least entertaining people on the season they think could win, rather than.
Now you're on my way.
But the problem is they probably vote out the Parvatis and the other archetypes because they are entertaining and they want that screen time.
I'd be so disappointed if, like, Adam and Michelle came back to the show.
Yeah, I really would be.
That'd just be devastating. I'd probably write, like, something about how unhyped I was about that.
I can only imagine, John.
We'll just have to, store that one away in case it ever,
never happens
for some reason that we might have to discuss that topic. All right, so let's move on. We've spent a lot of time talking about Molly. Let's talk about the rest of the Cool Kids table, which was Molly, Jack, and Jamal.
Yeah, not who I would have picked preseason as my Cool Kids. That one, honestly, it caught me a little off guard when people started referring to them as the Cool Kids, though, again, you had to, but it was also the person that was referring to them as the Cool Kids. I was like, how are you? Like, you don't fit my mold. You don't fit my stereotypical mold for an outcast either. So the entire situation there was confusing me, honestly.
Yeah, I mean, I never sat at the Cool Kids table. But
no, you never sat at the Cool Kids table?
If I hope you were sitting down. But if that was the table, Molly, Jack, and Jamal, I don't know that I'd be upset that I was not sitting at the Cool Kids table. I'd be like, hey, I mean, really, it just kind of looks like not that different from my table.
I mean,
it just was odd that became the focus of certain players on the rest of their tribe. But hey, what a change we had from Karamoan, where it did legitimately seem like a
Cool 100%. Table. That was like the stereotypical high school Cool Kids table.
Absolutely, yeah. How far we've come. The Cool Kids have totally changed dynamics.
It changed generations, John.
Look at that, millennials coming up.
But I mean, the thing is, like, I actually kind of liked that group. Well, I mean,
me too.
Not Jack necessarily. I don't really know a lot about Jack, but I like Jamal a lot. And I especially liked Jamal's facial expressions when Kelly was talking, spinning her obligatory lie about the Island of the Idols. I don't know if you caught them, but he was basically giving some good side eye in the background there.
I'm sure we'll get to discuss this later, but I can't believe anyone would doubt Kelly's impeccable acting.
You know, there is something that I really hope from this season, and it's that everyone comes back from the island, lies about what they found there, but keeps telling the same lie.
You know, two for two.
And now everyone's heard the same lie. So if you're going to tell a lie, why tell a different one?
Well, it'll be funny because people will keep saying like, "Hey, 3 urns, 3 urns, 3 urns," and eventually someone will be like, "All right, but if there's 3 fucking urns, aren't they all broken by now?"
It's like, oh no, it was a new 3 urns. It was a new 3 urns.
New urns, yeah. There was shattered urns, but then there were 3 new urns behind it.
Someone's gonna do the math on these statistics of everyone getting like no prize or whatever.
Right.
You're going to have like, I'm trying to figure out who would be the most statistically inclined of doing like, okay, so it's a 1 1/3 shot times 1 1/3 times 1/3 times 1/3.
I mean, honestly, it's probably
right. Yeah,
Kelly.
Exactly.
The NBA, she's going to be like, all right, hang on.
Right. She's going to start doing the stats
down.
and then she's going to be like, wait, why am I doing this? I know what's actually there.
Yeah, I know what's actually at the island. So there were, once again, we talked about last week, the focus on the ladies. This week, again, we got a running theme. Ladies, making moves, getting idols, doing things, fulfilling the prophecy of our Queen Angelina. It was a beautiful thing,
Yeah,
right?
absolutely. I mean, and so one part of it is that if you award idols at a neutral location that anyone can go to, it's going to balance out who gets the idols, right? So, if you're giving idols at the island of the idols, it will just be more fair across gender lines. But then also we had someone find an idol on the island, and it was Chelsea, and that was great because, again, as you said, Angelina brought this into being. Without her, none of this would exist. And it's great to see. But also, it's, you're talking about making moves. Lauren made a big move this episode. That was, we'll see how it pays off for her, but that's really putting herself out there. And who does she go to do it? She goes to the other ladies on the tribe.
Yeah, I mean, it was a beautiful thing. Like, women calling the shots on both of these tribes. And like you said, Lauren went out there. She rounded up the votes. She took out another woman. But still, it was, this was led by not only a woman, but a woman of color on a very early vote. Like, when was the last time you saw that?
I don't remember. I'm now trying to think. It's been a while. It's not coming to mind so far. Let's put it that way. So, do you think though that, if they're leading this vote, should they have kept Molly around or, and gone for like Jamal, or do you think that Molly was the right target of those 3?
I mean, if you're going to vote for one of those 3, I feel like you keep Jack because A, he's athletic, and B, as the youngest, he's probably the most pliable.
100%.
Like he's probably just going to glom on to whoever is willing to work with him. Yeah, I don't know. I could go either way on that. This group didn't seem quite as gung-ho on
Women's
the Women's Alliance angle as the other tribe did. So, fine. If they're going to take out one of that trio, I guess Molly.
Yeah, no, I mean, I think that's probably right. So...
But again, I prefer they didn't take out one of that trio. Yeah. Oh, well. So with this sudden upswing in the ladies getting idols, do you think people are actually going to be less upset now that more women are getting them? Or possibly also less upset because now there's some more temporary idols that we're seeing?
I don't think they're going to be upset that I actually think people are going to like the temporary idols. Because I think that one of the biggest complaints about Survivor recently has been that there's too many idols. But the nice thing about temporary idols is they expire. So they don't last forever. So you're not holding on to like 5 idols for a final 6.
See, it's almost like you've never been on the internet because of course they're going to fucking complain about the idols. It doesn't matter. Everyone feels the urge to complain about this show that they love and watch, including us. Occasionally, we just complain about different things. But yeah, I do think though that there is some progress being made here, and I do think that the the gender imbalance getting reduced when it comes to idols is going to help. It'll help both the game and the show and the fandom, to be honest. So I'm looking forward to that. And I think the way that it's happening is good. I think it seems like something that can be sustainable, whether it's sending people off to an island where they've got a fair shot or whatever it might be, maybe giving the ladies pockets. There's suggestions out there. I don't know if you've heard them.
Yeah, pockets would be nice. There's only so many places to hide an idol, though apparently we've discovered a new one, in your hair.
Exactly.
Yeah,
and if you believe Twitter, Sandra tied that bad boy.
I did not. Wow, that's awesome. I didn't. Yeah,
Queen
no,
stays
that's actually
queen.
really cool. We would not have that option. We could not hide an idol.
I know this is
I know,
discriminatory.
right? Us thinning hairline men are at a grave disadvantage, and I think the show should tilt the show back, in a fair direction.
I want to hear more about your men's rights movement. Okay, so the women, one other woman that we forgot to talk about is Janet, who is not becoming a target. Janet is just like one of the crew, and it's wild.
I mean,
the old lady is just, the older woman is not being discussed as someone they got to get rid of, as a liability, blah, blah, blah. She's made connections. She's helping plot who they should target. She's not like sitting passively back and being like, oh, whoever you all want to vote out, I'm on board. I'm just a vote for you. Hell no, Janet is out there calling shots.
Yeah, no, I mean, it's like, the other thing about it is like, who's the first person Lauren went to? She went to Janet. She's building like, alliances. She's not just sitting back and being like I have to sit back because I'm going to be a target otherwise. She just like blended in seamlessly, and I've actually been kind of impressed with, normally you see the oldest contestants like stick out like a sore thumb. But on the other tribe, I think Tom has blended in pretty well too. He's just like, he's not like ordering everyone around or anything like you usually see older men do. He's just part of the gang too. So,
which I mean is even more amazing because he's also a former athlete. He's not just an older man. That type tends to be a bit more aggressive with their thoughts and opinions, and Tom is playing it really well. It must have been balanced out by his Canadian-ness.
Well, you say he's an athlete, but he played hockey. Like, I mean, come on.
Yeah, well,
they do. They have big butts, and I cannot lie.
But this season, I mean, it's defying some expectations. I mean, I mentioned Janet, but just I feel like last season we said that if you're watching this show for social justice, you're going to end up disappointed nearly every single time. What if this is the season?
It's very possible because it does seem like a lot of the people they cast this season, you take one look at them, you think something, and then you see how they play, and it's like, oh no, this is actually a little different than what I would have thought. And, we talked about Janet, we talked about, Tom, and Jamal is not playing how I would have thought he was just by looking at him. I think that's true of a lot of people. You kind of slot them into these stereotypes that's based upon how Survivor casts them, and I think what's really interesting this season is that what you thought they were casting these people for is not what they're casting them for, and instead it's like someone else that was cast for that. And so there's this little kind of realignment where like the Survivor stereotypes are suddenly different than what they normally are, and that's really cool.
Yeah, I mean, if you just like think of some of the flips on the usual script that we've had so far, like the butch lesbian is the comic relief. She survives the first vote. The strong guy is basically ignored. The older woman is actually super useful and gets along with people and is calling shots. There's a retired athlete that's supportive, and I'm not gonna like dock him at all for the male ego thing. Like, that was a joke. Who cares? Right. That was funny.
You have you got Chelsea starting fire like really easily after all the men fail, and finding an idol.
and a woman of color leading that first vote against her own tribe, Lauren, that we mentioned earlier, and a potential women's alliance.
Like, all of these things are, it's not that we haven't seen any of these before. It just, there seems like a lot of them popping up this season, and that's a nice surprise.
Yeah, I mean, again, I think it goes back to casting, and I mentioned last week that it's a relatively typical cast with certain slots, but there's just a slight tweak, and that can make all the difference, man. Just playing with the margins of this already good premise for a show.
Yeah, it
really
feels
works.
like they cast for a certain slot, but they just did it with a twist on a lot of these slots. They're like, oh, like this person will kind of give us this energy, but it's different than what we normally get. So.
Yep. Yeah, and I'm
me too, totally.
I feel like this could go to great places. So, speaking of great places, how about that Island of the Idols?
I like it so far. I think it's working for me so far. It's not too long. It gets, I mean, look, it has the giant heads.
Yeah, of course.
Always. But it's also, I like the way they kind of did it this week, where it's just like, hi, Kelly, and then they just start throwing facts at her, and then like they completely overwhelmed her, and it's like, okay, so now you have to remember some of this. And we knew where that was going. Well, presumably. But it's funny because she didn't. And then it's like, and then it's just a little bit of a test. Now, the funny thing about the test, as I think nearly Nina pointed out, was the test was basically what Chrissy used as evidence of her social game, which everyone then everyone that was on the jury was like, yeah, no, just memorizing facts is not actually listening to us.
Exactly.
But if that's what you're going to do in a 5-minute segment, I'm okay with that. And I like the fact that it's a challenge. Yeah. You don't just get something for showing up. You have to win a challenge, even if the challenge this week was a lot easier than the one last week. Agreed.
I just wonder, do you think that this segment has legs? Can this hold up for
that? I got
no
idea about. I kind of have my doubts, just because, like, how many times? I mean, how many lessons can they even teach?
That's what I was going to ask. If you assume that I'm guessing they must have mapped out all the skills they'll be teaching them each week. How can there be that many? You have to have at least a dozen, right?
Yeah, no, I mean, that's how many you need to have. You need to have about a dozen. I mean, right. I mean, there'll be one on puzzles. Like, you will have to beat Boston Rob at puzzles, and you will not do that, so don't take that challenge. But that will be one.
Finding an idol, grooming a goat.
I really don't know, what
left?
The other ones are. I don't think there's going to be another survival one. Fire's really, survival and fire are really only useful the first time. And then some of the other skills, how the heck do you test on that? So,
I have no idea, man. I think just at a certain point, I worry that they'll run out of the things that Sandra and Rob could effectively teach you.
I'm just trying to think of a good skill that they would try to teach that they'd be just the absolute worst people to teach you.
Damn.
I'm trying to maybe some sort of physical skill, but Rob's actually pretty good at challenges, but the type that he'd be really bad at.
Hold your arm in the
something
air for
like
6
that.
hours.
Yeah,
that's the Parvati skill.
Yeah.
Oh, remember Parvati?
Great.
It'd be so great if she was ever back on this show. So great. I can just, I would really like that. I hope it happens someday. Yeah. So anyway, I'm with you. I enjoyed this week's segment. I like having Rob and Sandra around always. It's just great. As a Survivor fan, I'm still here for it. I do worry though that, it's going to get 6, 7, 8 weeks in and we'll be like, okay, but why don't you just start recycling some of these skills?
Maybe they will.
I don't think there's
maybe they will. Maybe that's the way they do it. Personally, the other thing that I was thinking about was just I'm kind of willing to just ride this out as long as it works for me. And they'll wait for it to stop. But also, they are just having so much fun in the brief time they're given. and like they can just deliver
Yes.
that like just on cue. It's even just like the little things, like the way Rob reads the like the jacked up note is just cracking me up every time.
That's great. Yes, because it's so
Right.
like formulaic.
But he's like definitely having fun with it, and the person who they bring it to is just like,
Uh-huh.
what is going on? What is happening? And Rob is,
Why is Boston Rob reading a note out loud to me?
I don't know. I'm just finding that so funny.
It's great. I definitely enjoyed it. It's a nice little diversion, and I don't think it detracts from the actual show. Like, I think it's been integrated
Especially
really
because,
well so
if
far.
you consider that, if it's like in place of another kind of like island or isolated thing, like this is a much better way to isolate one person, is to do it with having someone to bounce off of rather than just be on their own.
Yep. Yeah, because we've discussed this many times in the past, but some people just aren't good at confessionals. So if they get sent out to that island, it's like, oh God, I have to labor through watching this person talk to the camera, which they're terrible at. And maybe that can be a skill that Rob and Sam would teach. Like, here's how to not bore the audience to fucking tears.
You know what was actually funny? I did have a thought this week of what would Boston Rob do if someone was going to this island every week, and he'd vote the person who went out to this island every time.
Yes.
And so it's just funny because he's not going to give that advice to the people that come see him, but like that's like totally what he would do, which is
just so you know, I would be voting you out if I was playing. But I'm not playing. Let me read this note. It says. All right. I
thought he was
Rob
here.
Impression, by the way.
I was.
Yeah. You are in the presence of greatness with impressions. So let's flip back to the Purple Tribe. Sorry, not Purple Tribe. Okay. The Orange Tribe still. Noura's weirdness. Like, I know some people are very much on board with Noura. Do you find the weird thing entertaining? Is she annoying?
I mean, it can be two things.
For you?
Yeah. No, I mean, it's, there are moments when it's like, okay, like that's a little much. And then there are moments when I'm like, that's kind of funny. Like the dancing was funny. That was fun. That was good. The weird yoga was annoying, but then everyone's reaction to it was very funny. Because it's like, okay,
yes. It's like the Coach Chi thing where it's like, it's funny watching people play
exactly.
Off of
so it's just, she's like, we're doing this 50 times, and then to watch everyone go 50, like what the hell?
50.
Like that was good. That was, that's what you want to see from that. So there is a line right now. I think she's, walking it just fine, but it's.
Yeah. I think I prefer my weirdos a little weirder than this, but I mean, way less weird than Debbie, who is obnoxious. But, the appropriate amount of weird, I think, is just a little bit more than what Noura's offering so far. But who knows? Maybe she's got another year. Maybe she can dial it up.
I mean, and for me, I always think there's kind of like the weirdos get old for me after a while. So,
yes. Yeah, and that's the thing, is they can easily wear out their welcome if they have some one-note shtick thing that's, it's fine for a little while, but then it's like, so that's
now, if you can take it to another gear and have assistant coach show up as your loved one.
God, it's an all-time Rubba moment. So good. I mean, Token Team's coach really is by far the most tolerable coach, and it's because he didn't realize what Coach was going to look like on TV yet. So every moment is just, it's glorious.
It's just completely lacking in self-awareness.
So, and it's a beautiful thing. Well, anyway, we're just setting the standard too high. Yeah, I hope Coach doesn't come back again. I'd be really disappointed if Coach came back again. Oh, I guess that's...
No, I was going to say, I don't know why you're talking about that. That's not going to happen.
I mean, why would I even discuss anybody coming back? Who knows? So let's talk about the Purple Tribe, finally. We did get brief glimpses of them, but one person who we did not get brief glimpses of, who you alluded to earlier, Dean, who is a person that exists and has not had any professionals, getting freaking no screen time. Somehow, this is not causing an outrage like when Purple Julia did last year. now is your chance. You can take up the fight and be the Dean Stan and demand all the missing Dean footage. Go ahead.
I should warn you that I actually have Dean in the Outcast League.
Yeah, that you're the perfect.
Okay.
Person
This is what I'm gonna do. I'm gonna do it. I'm
fight.
gonna do my best. So Dean is obviously a man of many talents. He is clearly very interesting. He jumps off the page so much a camera cannot capture him. So what we're not seeing is Dean ignored because he's boring. We're seeing Dean ignored because he's too big to be filmed. Yeah.
Yeah. One of our commenters, I believe it was Stick to the Plan, and I'm going to be really disappointed if I got that wrong, but hey, my memory sucks. Referred to Dean as looking as though he was in the solid business douche phase of his career. And
yeah, I mean, look, I have no way to feel about Dean one way or the other. Last week, I think he had like one comment, and it was one that I was like, yeah, good for you, Dean. You seem to be on board with Elaine. And that was all I cared about last week. So like, you know, I don't think I have any reason to be against Dean. It's just that we have literally seen none of him. He is just absent, which is, you know, you don't normally expect that from a Dean.
I mean, if he keeps this up for like 4 or 5 more episodes, people are going to start thinking
you know,
he's
he
the winner.
could be Cowboy Ricking us this entire time.
Yes. Yeah, he could be the new Tyler.
Yeah.
So, hey, you mentioned Elaine, though.
Yeah.
Where the hell was Elaine? Like, whenever Elaine's not on screen, shouldn't all the other players
They
be
should
saying,
be.
where's Elaine?
Yeah, no, it was just that, you know, honestly, I'm not reading into the lack of anyone's time on Purple because, you know, this story this week was Orange, and the story that had to be told on Purple was, hey, someone found an idol. And so they had to give Chelsea all her props, and they had to give Fallout from Last Tribal, and that's it. That's all they did.
It's almost as though the show maps out a storyline, and if you're not involved in the storyline, you don't get on TV. Nah, that's probably not it. It's probably they got something against Dean. Who knows? Maybe he did some Instagram picture. And
I mean, you know,
now
it's
they
just
hate
I
him
think
forever.
Edgic says that Dean can't be on the camera.
Oh.
Yeah, because
I forgot about
Edgic edits the show.
That's probably it.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Someone in our comments also suggested that when you pick your fantasy team, you should ignore Edgic and pick with your gut. And I was like, Edgic, or your gut is the Edgic that lives inside of you. So, all right, let's get to some fun. We got a segment that we're doing this season, just like the Boston Rob and Sandra. We are the people that you will be going to for your advice to help you with anything. It could be absolutely anything. You can ask us things about Survivor. We'd prefer you didn't. You could ask us really stupid things, which we really would prefer you would.
Yes. No, 100%. I would too.
Like, if you are going to ask stupid questions for this, save them for weeks that I'm on and just come at me with your dumbest that you've got. So let's hear some of this week's contenders. The first one, I'll take this one. It's hi, Andy and John. So we're off to a
this
great
one's
start
clearly
already.
not meant for me.
It's election time here in Canada and seemingly never not election time in the US, and I'm facing a bit of a dilemma. I hate how elections always turn into choosing the best of a bunch of bad options. Personally, I'm not a fan of either of the two parties that are projected to win the most amount of seats in Parliament, but luckily a candidate from a third party will probably win my riding. I'm torn between. Yeah, we'll get to it. I'm torn between following the news to stay informed on the parties that actually have a chance to win the election and just blocking it all out because my mind is already set on who I'm going to vote for. Do either of you have any advice on how to manage anxiety when times are tense and divisive? Then there's some other stuff, and it says, blah, blah, blah. Sincerely, also feel free to shorten or edit.
Which you just did very well. I think that you should handle this because if there's one thing I know from the Purple Rock Slack, it is that your election insight is unparalleled. You have said things
I am the 538.
Yeah, that's
of
what I'm saying.
the Purple
You
Rock Slack
understand the
chat.
fundamentals. You get to not just how a particular race will play out, but how it should always play out and who has the advantages.
I'm a man with my finger on the pulse. What can I say? First of all, the Canadians have elections? Yeah. That's so cute. I thought like the Politburo.
Yeah, I thought it was the
decided
Mounties,
everything for
actually.
them. I didn't speaking of Mounties, like, is that what the riding thing is? Is that?
Yeah,
really
it's
horses,
because,
right?
back in the old days, the Mounties used to ride around and collect the votes from everyone. And so that.
You joke. I'm serious. Like, I feel like it
and so the district was
horses,
how far
right?
a Mountie could ride in a day.
That actually seems pretty legitimate. Like, some Canadian is going to be like, no, you idiot, it's this. But it doesn't seem like a totally absurd, like, measurement. Like the idea that Canadians measure everything and how far out you could travel. Perfect.
I mean, I imagine it's actually just an old English
everything
term.
Canadian politics. Oh, okay, that could be. Everything about Canadian politics is just like fascinating and foreign to me. Like the ridings thing and Parliament, third parties,
and fourth parties,
third parties,
and fifth
Matt,
parties
that might win things.
Ooh, I wonder if the writer
Wild.
lives in Quebec and can vote for the Quebec Party.
Yeah, the separatists.
Yeah, like, I mean,
Quebecois.
come on now. How could you possibly turn that down?
See, I almost have my finger on the pulse of the Canadian electorate, but not quite.
So,
yeah. Maybe I need to. Nope. You know what? Almost tried a prime minister joke there. I'm not going to do it.
Yeah, I don't think that we should be making fun of the leader of any other country at this point.
Right. Glass houses.
So yeah, how do you manage anxiety, John?
You know what? This is a legit thing. Like, enough joking. Like, part of the reason I stay off social media and I don't watch like the 24-hour news is that like the day-to-day stuff, especially now for us, is just crushing. So I totally get it. It's usually not awful for me in particular because I'm in a very safe demographic. But I do have actual empathy for other humans, so it's like nerve-wracking to watch such things. I would just generally advise avoiding, and then maybe, checking in on the headlines once a week, because you figure if a story's got legs, you'll find something about it. Because, man, just the day-to-day, too much. Just stay off it. It's not
black humor.
Do you have a strategy?
No, I'm being completely honest. It's why I enjoy Twitter days like today when everyone's just joking about Elizabeth Warren and her ability to get it. And if you don't know what I'm talking about, this is actually a funny story. So, you should look that up.
Any story that involves the phrase Elizabeth Warren fucks.
It's a great story, and I don't know why anyone would be like, oh, I would never vote for her if that's true. I'd be like, hell yeah, go Liz.
See, this is one of those things where, like I said, stay off social media, but like, this is the reason why it's hard to stay away is because every once in a while, and it is honestly once in a great while, but something like this happens. And man, that was fun.
But that's why you have me and the other people to kind of share the best memes into the Slack for you.
You know what? Maybe that's the strategy. Maybe you just have a group of friends and each one of you jumps on the grenade in a given week and, wades into social media, their news, whatever, and, filters out some stuff.
Without trying to drag everyone down into the depressing muck.
Exactly.
I mean, I think that honestly is kind of how I cope. Yeah. So.
Yeah. I mean, I was not kidding. Like it generally is, or genuinely is just, I can't take it, man. I don't need that in my life.
Don't blame you.
So yeah. Let's move on though. Let's go to our next letter. Do you want to do this? Or you want me to?
Okay. So, dear John and Andy, again, guys, nailed it. I have a 1-year-old and a 2-year-old. Yes, I know that was my first mistake. They're great kids most of the time, but they have a tendency to be very whiny. Any parenting tips before I resort to saying, I'll give you something to whine about, and then force them to watch Survivor Nicaragua? Sincerely, someone call the Wambulance. P.S. On a positive note, my 2-year-old often asks to watch Viver, so at least I know I'm doing one thing right as a parent. So, I got to say, Wambulance, you came to the right people, because I don't know if you know this, but I don't have kids. So therefore, I am the perfect one to give you terrible advice on how to get your kids to stop being whiny. That's
You
what
are
I'm
the
saying.
expert on raising children around here.
So things that I've heard have worked. Alcohol. Young children have very low tolerance, so you can just knock them right out.
I feel like we're going to get called by like child services now. I mean,
okay, was that the line? I didn't actually know.
All right, keep it coming, Nostradamus of the, or not Nostradamus.
Well, now you made me gun shy, but right, okay, yeah.
Don't suggest guns
but you
either.
can pit them against each other in a sort of child Thunderdome, and then you can make money off that because people will pay to watch.
I feel like that's a YouTube channel that probably already happened and resulted in
So
some
you're saying I'm over 2. Okay.
Yeah, I mean, keep it coming.
I don't know. I mean, kids are just whiny sometimes, and they don't. I mean, my understanding is they kind of stay whiny at times. You know, they have their redeeming qualities for sure, and they go through phases. But you know, you're a parent. You had kids. You kind of chose this life. I don't know what to tell you. That's what I'm saying.
You're screwed. No, see, real advice only because good parenting is something that I take very seriously. Like, kids whine to get what they want. If you give them what they want when they whine,
but they'll also stop whining at that
again.
moment.
Don't positively reinforce whining. There are so many kids that my kids hang around with where I just want to say to the other parents, like, hey, you know why your kid whines all the fucking time? Because your kid whined 6 times, and then the 6th time, you gave in and gave him exactly what he was crying for. So next time, he'll whine 7 times if he has to get what he wants. Because it works. It just takes him 6, 7, 8, 9, whatever times. If it took him 20 and he didn't get what he wanted, you know what he'd say? Fuck it, that's not worth my effort, and he wouldn't do it again. It's gonna take restraint and effort, and seriously, like, you'd knock that out in, I mean, you have to deal with like a rough month or so, maybe even 2 weeks. It could be shorter, but once it's gone, it really pretty much stays gone. I mean, you just have to extinguish that bad boy.
Well, I'm glad then that we could give some real advice there, since obviously I had no idea.
You know what? I actually, that related to this letter, I have started letting my kids watch Survivor. They're total casuals that only like the challenges, but they're watching with me now. Side note, again, the person also mentioned that they just finishing watching Kagayen, which had to be entertaining with children. Like, I feel like children would really appreciate.
Oh,
like,
you know
Tony
what? I actually forgot my other piece of joke advice, which was just let them watch a lot of TV. Just Elmo.
Oh, yeah. Well, as long as it's not
because
Disney,
that's too violent for kids.
you
Yeah,
don't want them
Disney's
turning
very
into
violent.
violent thugs.
No, but I just remember the one time I had to look after my nephew because my sister was pregnant with their second kid. The only way I can get him to stop, because he knew like something was up, was to watch Elmo for a very long time. So, but he was also a baby, so that was more
cool. I mean, I prefer Peppa Pig. Like, if you're looking for children's programming, Peppa Pig is like legit entertaining. It's very cute. They make some very Britishy jokes. It's adorable. Yeah. It's a good show. Peppa Pig. That and Peg plus Cat when they're a little older. Another good one.
Has kids programming gotten a lot better? Because sometimes I watch what my nephews are watching, and sometimes I'm like, hey, this isn't so bad. And then other times I'm like, ooh, this seems awful.
Oh, there's some shows that are legit terrible. Caillou, like, gets crapped on a lot, and it's deservedly so. It's so bad. It should not be on TV. Yeah, let's not go into a whole side tangent on children's programming, because I have.
But now you know what people can ask about in the future for when John will not be on next week.
That's true. You can save your dumb questions about kids programming for me. Final letter for this week. Dear giant wooden-headed people.
A little better, but yeah.
Closer. Yeah. I am a prince in a foreign country, and I have millions of dollars. However, my kingdom is being taken over by my evil stepbrother. I need a way to get my money out of my country before my stepbrother takes it all. What can I do? Best regards, a prince in peril.
Okay, so I have sent Prince an email, but in case you didn't get it, I'm going to read my social security number and bank account number over the air so that he can send me the money and to get it out of the country. So no one else listen except for Prince in peril, okay?
Yeah. Okay, yeah, I see no way that this scheme can possibly fail.
Yes.
Thus far,
what would you
flawless.
do, John? How would you get millions of dollars out of a foreign country?
Yeah, you know what? This reminds me. I don't think I've ever actually told you this, but I used to actually, when I'd get these, I would email back.
Oh
with
God,
people
you're one of those
mess
people.
around with them, and like, I am. And I would send them like fake names and photoshopped IDs and all this other stuff, and like I'd always be someone. Like, I'd use a name that was famous, definitely in America, but not, like, worldwide famous, so they would stop talking to me. Like, I'd be Peyton Manning prior to his Super Bowls, or just, it was anything exceptionally dumb that I could do. This is the sort of thing that you do when you're unmarried with children, is...
I don't know why you need to qualify it as, like, tell me what you do when you're unmarried with children, because... with
okay. Maybe it's not a universal truth that everybody is exceptionally stupid when they're in that position, but I certainly was. At this point, to be fair, I think when my wife saw it, she was both disturbed.
I mean, that's how you knew you found the right person, right?
All right. Exactly. That's the one right there. All right, so that wraps them up for this week. Hopefully, our good friend the Prince can get his money to you and safely out of the country.
You know what? A way that I've heard you
fine.
can smuggle money out of a country or drugs is in religious statues. No, religious statues.
Body
just
cavities?
well,
religious statues in body
cavities.
cavities.
I mean, you had to transport them some way. But no, you get like a bunch of like Virgin Marys, and
Sure.
But you put the money in them, and then they don't stop it because you're a religious organization. And then when the plane crashes on a mysterious island, and the drug addict finds a statue, and cocaine falls out of it, and that was their drug of choice, and they had been clean until now. It's almost like a miracle because it's coming from a religious statue.
I mean.
That's what I'm saying. Like, I just came up with that off the top of my head.
Yeah, I was almost lost there.
You're found now,
but I think I followed.
Okay, that's what I'm saying, right? It all ties up.
Yeah. Religion. I found it.
Yes.
Okay, so let's do some predictions for this coming week. One for each tribe, and let's start with the Orange Tribe. Why not?
Also
known as Lero, by the way.
I'm also looking at the Wikipedia page right now, just in case I forgot anything. So we just saw them go. We just saw them not go to Tribal Council because Purple went this week. But when last we left, Ronnie's on the outs. Ronnie's mad. Ronnie's mad, but I also still don't think it's Ronnie. For whatever reasons, I just I don't think it is. My prediction.
You don't think that Ronnie's going to get voted out a second time?
Oh, I was saying Ronnie. Yeah, that is.
Is that what you're telling me right now?
Aaron,
you don't think Ronnie will get voted out a second
Thanks
time?
for waiting to jump in until after I had said it 5 times. Way to really be.
And a really good friend
no chance in hell. I know you're not going to. Yeah, so Aaron was the one who I was talking about. Whoops. Yeah. Thanks, John. No, but I don't think it'll be Aaron. I predicted that if they went this week, that it would be Vince, because I kind of thought there'd be a little blowback after the first time, and I still think that, and I still think that Vince is the most logical target. If there's blowback, otherwise it'd be Aaron.
Okay. All right. I do feel like Aaron probably will stick around. I don't know that it'd be Vince, though. I feel like Vince is going to work with that women's alliance, and they're down to work with him. The problem is, then that leaves me with, like, Dean.
Yep.
Who is also pretty jacked.
Who also seems to be working with the
Tom,
women's alliance.
Who they've... Right, like, he does seem to break the mold and get along with that crew pretty well.
Okay.
You know what? Screw it. I'll say Dean. Yeah, like, if we suddenly get Dean content at the start of the episode, and we're like, ha-ha, the prophecy is fulfilled.
So the one thing I will say, I mean, yeah, and I'm not even sure it's actually going to be a guy. I could definitely see it being a woman who's, like, more on the outside, maybe, of that alliance.
Don't you ruin this women's alliance for me.
I hope it
I'm
exists.
willing it into
I'm just
existence.
saying, like, I could see it being someone that's on the outside there, but...
You know what? Why did I say Dean?
Yeah.
It's Aaron. If they're gonna vote someone that's outside of them, it's Aaron. At least Dean seems.
And the thing is, like, you know, it's more likely to be
with
Aaron this week than it was the episode we just saw, because now the numbers are back to even. You're closer to a swap or through a merge. So Aaron would make some sense again. In fact, I'm almost talking myself into Aaron. Now that you say it. Yeah.
Bold. Okay, so let's do the Purple Tribe.
So again, you know, it's definitely, you know, Molly's the one on the target, right, John? No, I'm just.
Yeah. The theme of this week is voting people out a second time.
I mean, again, like, we're set up with kind of the outsiders, but again, I don't think they're really the outsiders. Like, I think they will be able to work their way back in. It's just because, like, I think we have seen enough from Jamal and Jack that I think they do have a social game. So I don't think that they're going to be left outside. I'll go with Noura.
I similarly am going to go with Noura because I don't think you keep her around forever. And I think, you know, if you can fold those other two guys back in, you do it. And unite around voting out.
Just
Noura.
add one prediction, though. One thing I noticed was that the tribe immunity had two faces on it, and it's very clear to me that it will come apart at a certain point. So there will be three tribes at some point. I'm, like, very convinced of that. If you look at that idol, I feel like I can see the seam where Probst can just, like, rip it apart.
Yeah, it'll be funny when he goes to hand it to somebody at some point, breaks apart, and he's like, "Oh, ignore that. Nothing happened. Nothing to see here." All right. Let's see. Next week, you have Emma and Brad. Oh, so sorry. You can send them advice questions. You can do that via our email, which is purplerockpodcast@gmail.com, or you can always DM us on Twitter. You could do it in the comments section, but that kind of, like, removes some of your anonymity. You can find our comment section at purplerockpodcast.com. If you want to tweet at us, the show is at purplerockpod on Twitter. You can always DM. The DMs are open there, so feel free to send your... Well, no. Don't send whatever you want. But, you know. Send us some advice questions, and again...
Or me, too. I also want the dumb
on the
ones.
show.
If you couldn't tell.
Sure. Yeah, if you want to get profoundly academic.
Sure, why not?
Do that for Brad and Emma. Yeah. If you want to get in touch with Matt on Twitter, how would they do that, Matt?
Purple Rock Matt.
Okay, and if they wanted to get some money into Matt's bank account,
if you DM me, I will give it out
Matt?
to anyone who asks. Yes. If you didn't catch it earlier, because nice I did read it earlier.
You're just really... Yeah. Right. Oh, I must have talked over it. I'm so sorry. I hope the prince at least heard it. All right. Anything else?
I think that's it.
All right. In that case, let's hit some music.